Grace America, I'm Hugh Hewitt. Glad to be back. Thanks, Alex Marlowe, for sitting in for me yesterday when I was in Connecticut. The news came yesterday that Jimmy Kimmel will be back on the air tonight for ABC Disney, but that I think about half of the stations that carry him are not going to carry him. Nexstar and Sinclair are not bringing him back. Got horrible ratings. And I don't care. I couldn't care less if ABC wastes money on him, if Disney wants to insult the half the country that thinks he's a moron. It doesn't matter to me. I do want to, however, clear up for you folks something about Chairman Carr of the Federal Communications Commission, who I've only met once virtually over this program. Don't know him. Very smart lawyer. Been at the FCC for a while. The FCC was established in 1934, and it was the successor to the Federal Radio Commission, which was established in 1927. So the commission predates the progressive outburst. I mean, it's post-Wilson, but it's pre-FDR. It's not New Deal. It's Hoover, and it's pre-Depression. And it came out of an actual engineering problem. Radio, like television, regular television, not cable, broadcasts over the broadcast spectrum. And if you don't regulate via licensing which part of the spectrum a station can use, I got started, I'll use AM 640, more stimulating talk radio in LA. It was my first radio station, 50,000 clear watt channel, meaning that you could keep it at 50,000 all night long. And I would do the Saturday night and Sunday night shift when I got started in 1990, and I could be heard in North Carolina from LA. I mean, that's just what AM radio does with airwaves, and it's just big booming signals. But most signals have to turn down, if they're on the AM band, turn down at night, or they'll interfere with other signals. FM is different. Translators have changed the technology. But the Federal Communications Commission is a traffic cop first. And you got to understand, people are colliding with each other on the signals. And I have a San Diego station, 1170, that for years has been, mugged by this giant signal out of Tijuana, and I think they fixed that finally, but I'm not sure. I can't keep up with it. I'm on 400 different affiliates. I have no idea what's going on with the signal in each of them. Some have great signals, some have less than great signals, but they're all regulated by the Federal Communications Commission. And the Federal Communications Commission is created by statute, and the statute says it shall issue licenses in the public interest. It uses that phrase repeatedly, in the public interest. Now, it might be that the statute is unconstitutional. Might be. I don't think so. It depends on how public interest is regulated. It can't be viewpoint non-neutral. That's a First Amendment baseline rule, but the public interest might also require that you not lie about the assassin of a very public figure in the immediate aftermath of his death, like Jimmy Kimmel. You might be able to have a narrow definition like that. Either way, Brendan Carr, the chairman, on a podcast said we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. What he's referring to is the renewal of the license process, I think. I'm not sure. I didn't talk to him. I didn't hear the podcast. But every radio station, every local affiliate, has a book where the public can register their applause or their boos about the airwaves and how they're being used, and the FCC take that into account. The FCC also has lots of rules about sponsorship, which I tell you about. Whenever you hear me say this is a sponsor, that's because it's an FCC rule. They have rules about words you may not use because there are probably kids in the back of the car, and decency rules apply, and television has its own set of rules, and the FCC has all sorts of rules, and I've always lived within them. They're an FCC complaint. It's very easy to serve the public interest because the fairness doctrine went down in 1989, thank goodness, because talk radio started in 1989 with Rush. He built them all. I've just got a Nordstrom's in it. And it took off because the FCC had created this fairness doctrine, which was actually prohibiting speech, and Reagan killed it off and got it started, and it was deregulated. But the public interest statute is still there. What the chairman said is he thought the public interest statute had been engaged, and people lost their minds and their heads blew up. Well, Jimmy Kimmel hadn't been barred from being back on the air. He's going back on the air tonight because they think they're going to get decent ratings out of a guy whose show is dead. And maybe they will for a night. Maybe it'll be funny. That would be a change. What I'm here to tell you is Brendan Carr's doing his job. And I heard Senator Cruz and I heard Senator Hawley. I heard some Democrats saying it was thuggish and mafia and mob-like. Senator McConnell didn't like it. Hey, you're the legislators. Change the law. He's the appointee who's given the law to apply. You know what I did not like? Senator Eric Schmidt's book about the censorship in Murphy versus Missouri. It started out as Schmidt versus Biden or Missouri versus Biden. They objected to Fauci, Collins, and the rest of the gang obliging censorship of speech about COVID across social media without any writ. They don't have any writ to do that. The public law doesn't do that. But the FCC has a statute, and the statute should be applied. It should not be applied when you want, when you don't want. Now compare that with what Team Obama cooked up. They didn't like conservative talk radio, didn't like me, didn't like Rush. So they cooked up local content regulations. They proposed them as a rule. It didn't go anywhere. We shot them down because they were designed not to produce local content on local radios, which would have put local radio stations out of business because they can't afford to do it anymore. It's expensive. They'll have a morning show. Like I met Lee and Gary yesterday. They're fabulous morning hosts from my affiliates down in Connecticut. And I thought these guys were fabulous. And they're doing local news, weather, sports, politics, public affairs, what's going on in the school district, stuff like that. Every station has either a live and local in the morning or a live and local in the afternoon if they can afford it. But you force feed it, you'll put people out of business. And what were they trying to do? They were trying to put people out of business, and they were trying to force syndicated product off the air because the syndicated product that was selling was conservative because NPR destroyed the audience for liberal and left-wing talk radio because it was subsidized. And what Brendan Carr was doing was known as his job. And I understand that left-wingers are going to attack Brendan Carr because it was a diversion from the fact that a lunatic from the left wing, radicalized by the rhetoric of fascism and authoritarianism and hate and negativity, killed Charlie Kirk. And they were desperate to turn the page and turn the attention to Brendan Carr, and it was a little sideshow. I do not understand, and I'll talk with Senator Cruz and Senator Hawley when I get a chance. Hey, don't get mad at Carr. If you don't like the statute, repeal the statute. Now, you can't repeal the statute. You can repeal the public interest portion of it, but you got to keep the licensing. You got to. The market won't work. I heard my friend Charlie Cook talking about the market. The market won't work. The market was what was there in 27 to 34, and it didn't work because people were stepping on each other's signal and no one could hear anything. So you have to license. Now, it's possible that you could just auction the highest person, but then you have reliance damages. It's very complicated because you build a radio station and you invest millions of dollars and you build up your brand. I'll go back to my first radio station, AM 640 KFI, more stimulating talk radio. It's had the same brand forever. It's not my station. I'm not on it anymore. I don't know who's on it anymore. John and Ken, I don't know. Nihilist extraordinaire. And it was a fine radio station. I like working for them. But they've had the same brand, and they've built that brand, and everyone knows that brand, and people go to it in KNX 1070 and AM 870, The Answer, which is what I'm on in LA right now. And people know brands, and they rely on it. And when they rely on it, you build up equity in your business. You just can't take the license away. So the idea that we're going to re-auction every 10 years, that's really dumb. It doesn't account for reliance damages upon which a capitalist system depends. That you have a contract, and the contract says, provided that you're broadcasting in the public interest, you'll get your license renewed. So when Brendan Carr says, not sure about these affiliate licenses carrying Jimmy Kimmel, he's doing his job, and he's doing it out loud. He's not in secret. Compared with the Biden White House, which had 20 people, along with 66 other people, calling Meta and Google and the old Twitter to tell them to censor people. Done in the darkness, without statutory authority. So, Commissioner Carr, Chairman Carr, good on you. Real conservatives who believe in the rule of law understand that the Constitution invests Article 1 with the authority to pass laws. They passed the Federal Communications Act in 1934, which set up the Federal Communications Commission, and they gave you directives, and it's been amended, and you were doing what you thought was your job, and you didn't actually do anything. You talked about what you might do, and had you done something, it would have been appropriate for that point for Kimmel to try and say, maybe you got me, but he wouldn't have been able to because he wouldn't have had standing or redressability. And he's not on the air tonight on more than half the stations, not because of what Brendan Carr said, because he's a lousy comic with no audience who lives in a blue bubble, and he's not very smart. Not going to call him ignorant, just going to say he's not very smart, and he's definitely not funny. And he has no sense of timing or common decency. That's why his affiliates took him off the air, not Chairman Carr. I'll be right back.